The media pundits, oh my God. Yes, Morning Joe and CNN. So you got Mika and Anderson Cooper and a couple of others. They are being called out because of defending Joe Biden for all these years. And now for them to have like this embarrassing performance on the debate stage, they are getting railed by the New York Times, by the Washington Post, all of these different outlets that are basically pointing fingers at them and say, stop it, just admit it. Joe Biden is done. He needs to step aside. What do they have to say about that? Let's start off with Mika. Because Morning Joe was probably the worst. They were probably the worst ones to run cover for Joe Biden. So let's get started with them.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe on this Monday, July 1st. This morning, we are waking up to a sea of headlines and opinion pieces from major news organizations, former party leaders, and very loud whispers, mostly behind the scenes, from present leading Democrats who say it is over. Here's a taste of the global call for President Joe Biden to get out of the race. The New York Times editorial board says Biden is not the man he was 4 years ago, calling his candidacy, quote, a reckless gamble. Editors at Georgia's largest newspaper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, echoed that take, demanding the president pass the torch. Quote, Biden deserves a better exit from public life than the one he endured when he shuffled off the stage on Thursday night. And then there were the headlines. Sneering, mocking, jeering all at once. This was the performance that has gotten us to this point.
We have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
It was bad. He said, we quote, we beat Medicare. He couldn't seem to land a thought. It was an unmitigated disaster by any measure. More than 3 days after that debate, it is still hard to comprehend what we saw from the president. The weak, raspy voice, the inability to complete basic thoughts. Most importantly, the failure to call out Donald Trump on his endless lies. Where was that? And yet, the very next day in North Carolina, there was Joe Biden, back to form, finding his voice, his winning smile, the vintage sparkle back in his eyes. Two appearances that were as different as, well, night and day.
And that is because that was before 6 p.m. at night. That was during the day, not during the evening, even though we have seen Joe Biden have these gaffes during the day as well. So to be fair, but what I want to call out there that Mika mentioned, people have to keep in mind that Mika will not come forward and make this statement had there not been pressure from the other media outlets that she just mentioned. So just be clear about that. Her and Joe, they have been running cover for Joe Biden ever since the moment that he got, before he got into office, during the 2020 Democrat debates, where I noticed there was a change in Joe Biden, him talking about this corn pop dude. I noticed then he struggled to answer some of the debate questions. But when I brought those things up, people said, shh, do you want to get Trump? Do you want to get Trump? I was like, okay, but you can see the difference between Joe Biden. Now, if you compare him from today to 2020, now you see a dramatic difference from 2020. So this is how these things can progress over time. This is Mika trying to find a way to do damage control.
I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know.
But he doesn't know how to tell the truth, because one thing else I want to add too, the reason why you didn't see Joe Biden debunk Donald Trump's lies is because Joe Biden was also telling lies, which I showed you after the debate. There were a number of lies that he told as well. So here again is corporate media being disingenuous. And she's not the only one. Other liberal media commentators are saying that Donald Trump was the one that told all the lies and Joe Biden is the truth teller. But the reality is that both candidates told a number of lies. I think that Donald Trump told more, but they're still trying to get you to believe there is a lesser of two evil. So do you see how this works, ladies and gentlemen? Let's fast forward a little bit here. Here we go.
The 80th anniversary of D-Day and a state dinner with President Macron, and then to Italy for the G7, followed by a flight across 12 time zones to LA for a fundraiser with former President Barack Obama. Just 33 hours later, he was headed back to the East Coast. The debate was also 2 weeks after his son Hunter was convicted on 3 felony gun charges and faces prison time. President Biden painfully told America he would not pardon his son.
Let me pause for a second, because Mika is trying to make excuses for his performance. And I just have to say this. Yes, the debate was 3 weeks after Hunter Biden was found guilty. However, that being said, let's get away from the elite bubble for just a second and let's talk about everyday working people that have to get up in the morning and go to work regardless of what just happened to them. There are people that work at McDonald's. There are people that work at Starbucks that have had family members that have died the day before and still had to go into work because they didn't get grievance pay. Okay, so Joe Biden's son being found guilty, especially considering the fact that Hunter Biden is alive, that's not an excuse. And he had 3 weeks time to get over the guilty verdict. That's Mika reaching. So this is corporate media trying to protect Joe Biden in every way, shape, or form. I know kids that have had to get up in the morning and go to school knowing that someone on their block just got shot. And they had to go to school because they had a test the next day. Okay, people do this all the time. How many of you know people that work in the health industry? How many times nurses still have to get up and still have to go on call regardless of what just happened to their family member right before then? So that's not an excuse, Mika. Oh, he might be dealing with some emotional things. Something's really bad because, he might be feeling some kind of way because of the Hunter thing. 3 weeks later, 3 weeks later, there are companies that I've worked for where you don't even get any grievance time if you lost a family member, or if you did get grievance time, you get 3 days. And then they try to tell you who you are allowed to grieve over and who you're not allowed to grieve over, right? So if it's not a spouse or a parent, really reaching here.
I really question his schedule. It makes me angry that he was moving across the world on 4 different time zones. It seems to me this is a lack of discipline. These were important events that he was going to, but the stakes in this election could not be any higher. Like many, I want to know, was this a one-off episode or a sign of what's to come? Can his team and the president himself move forward with more discipline and also manage the fact that he's 81? And while we're at it, let's talk about his age. Age is wisdom and experience that in the case of Joe Biden leads to more bipartisan legislation passed than any president over the past few generations and the largest expansion of NATO's alliance in history. Under Joe Biden and his age, America is stronger economically and militarily than any time in half a century.
Under Joe Biden's presidency and under his age, I really don't think the NATO expansion is something that you should brag about. A lot of us that are not for these wars are not okay with NATO expanding. So let's go ahead and push back on that talking point. Bipartisan legislation has been passed under Joe Biden's presidency, but what has been passed for the American people? When it came to bipartisan legislation that was passed for the American people, we were always shortchanged. When it comes to these wars, they have no problem giving Ukraine all the money that they want and the weapons that they need. They have no problem giving Israel all the money that they want. So what pieces of legislation is Mika referring to? She doesn't go into detail. That is important to note. Here is Mika trying to make excuses or trying to get you to support Joe Biden, even though Joe Biden doesn't even know what he's doing. You literally have someone here who is half senile. And Mika wants you to keep him in office while we have multiple wars that have been started under his administration. And this is who we're supposed to trust in the White House. Most of you don't trust him now. We'll get to the numbers and I'll show you what I mean.
And while facts may not matter to Donald Trump and his friends in the far right media, those are the objective facts. And that is the undeniable truth. Here's another truth. Age also needs to be managed. On my 50 over 50 lists, I celebrate women who are reaching their highest power well over 50, 60, 70, 80, even 90. And yet every one of those women are managing their fabulous age. I don't think it's over. This moment in the race fits the entire narrative of Joe Biden's life. In his personal and professional life, Biden has repeatedly risen up from rock bottom. It's what we love about him. So many draw hope from his empathy and his ability to have perspective, even right now, and to persevere when he is completely counted out. His list of losses and failures is long and would be unbearable for most.
A lot of people have, okay, so I'm sorry. So again, these are not excuses, okay? Mika is talking about Joe Biden as if he's the only one who's endured any type of loss or suffering and still had to perform well. A lot of people have to deal with that. They're called the working class, Mika. Most Americans that are a part of the working class, they have to deal with these things. They've had failures. They've had deaths in the family. They've had loss. They've had struggle, and they still have to get up and go to work. Some of them working multiple jobs, by the way. So I'm sorry, but just because you've dealt with struggle and loss in your life, that doesn't mean we should vote for you. It's like, what is this, a sympathy card?
In 1972, his wife and baby daughter were killed in a car accident. He had been elected to the Senate and took the oath of office in his surviving son's hospital room to remain by their bedsides. In 1987, his first campaign for president came to an end, and so nearly did his life, when a few months later, he suffered a brain aneurysm. It was so severe that his doctor told him his chance of survival was less than half, just to survive the surgery.
He went through all these bad things, so you need to vote for him because he went through bad things in his life.
And even if he lived, a long list of physical and mental limitations were likely. At his bedside before the surgery, he told his sons he was proud of them. And then Joe Biden survived the surgery, rehabilitated, and didn't look back. In 2008, his second bid for the presidency came to another early, painful end. After a poor showing in Iowa, he finished near the bottom with less than 1% of the vote, his campaign bottoming out after another low blow. And yet, the following summer, Biden would be back on the Democratic ticket as Barack Obama's running mate. 5 years later, A year into his second term as vice president, Joe Biden's son, Beau, was diagnosed with brain cancer, believed to have been caused by exposure to burn pits while his son was serving in Iraq as a captain in the Army National Guard.
And he's continuing to fund these wars, regardless of the fact of what happened to his son. Everybody understand that? He's continuing to fund these wars, regardless of what happened to his son.
Beau would die 2 years later. The second child Joe Biden would have to bury. That is the lowest of lows in Joe Biden's life. In 2015, another political failure. Barack Obama chose to support Hillary Clinton as his heir apparent and not even his own vice president. After numerous political and personal setbacks, Joe Biden may have questioned whether he would ever return to presidential politics again.
If you listen to Mika very closely, you can hear the emotion in her voice. She sounds like she's about to cry. Her voice is a little bit shaky. She put her emotions into this. And let me give a warning about this. Some of us had put our emotions into a former presidential candidate, and that was Bernie Sanders. And when Bernie disappointed us, we were incredibly hurt. Mika's job here is a commentator. But it was very apparent to me that Mika was emotionally invested in Joe Biden being president. And that is what you hear. It's like she's begging. She's reading off all these things that happened to Joe Biden as if Joe Biden just died. Are we at a funeral? No, we're not. Why are you reading off all these things that happened to this man? That is to get a sympathy card. That is to get some type of sympathy out of the viewer so that you will show up and support and vote for Joe Biden. That is sad that that's what you have to reach for to get people to come out and support him. Isn't this sad?
And then came Charlottesville and the vile racist march by white supremacists and neo-Nazis across the UVA campus. As a direct response to what he saw as a threat to our nation's core values, Biden announced his third try for the White House. And just like his first two presidential campaigns, he was staring at an early exit in the race, stumbling in the first Democratic debate after a broadside by Kamala Harris. He finished a distant fourth in Iowa and an even worse fifth in New Hampshire.
And you guys contacted Jim Clyburn and said, help him win South Carolina and turn this thing around. Because otherwise, had it not been for that, Bernie Sanders would have won the Democratic nomination, although the DNC would have still played some tricks to make sure that they didn't give it to him. But we all saw the writing on the wall. We saw what was happening, right?
All experts, just like right now, said it was over for the man from Scranton.
No one has gotten this far, finishing fourth and fifth, and
we'll just stop it there because I'm sorry. She goes a little bit far there. And then we're just going to fast forward a bit here. She goes into his wins and all this kind of stuff. Like, this is terrible. I've never seen, I've never seen them go this hard before.
My family and I, as you know, have known this man for decades, and his family as well. And yes, I know them personally. And I still believe in Joe Biden.
And that's the problem right there. The fact that she has a personal relationship with Joe Biden. Her family has known the Bidens for decades, and that is why she is emotionally invested. I would say you probably shouldn't be covering stories about Joe Biden, Mika. In fact, if I was over there at MSNBC and it was my network, I would actually recuse you from those stories about Joe Biden because of the personal relationship that you have with him, and maybe have you focus on stories with people that you do not have a personal relationship with. Obviously, that is how you get biased journalism or commentary. So you see the reaching. Now, she wants you to believe that what happened with Joe Biden at the debate was just a fluke. He was so much better in North Carolina that other day. It's just a fluke. This is not a real issue. You got to stand by Joe Biden. Just a fluke, huh? Let me show you something that also happened during that debate that many people are not talking about. Pay very close attention to Dana Bash's hand over here. Nobody is talking about the moderator signaling multiple times to direct his attention. Watch this.
President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states. And under the issue of immigration and border security, President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the...
In case temporarily allowed.
Did you guys see it? Why was Dana... Watch this. I'll put it on mute when I play it this time. You put it right there. Why is Dana... Look at that. There it is. Why was she signaling to Joe Biden? Look over that way, Joe. And how come no one else is calling this out? And how was that allowed? So there is Dana Bash, someone who was a CNN commentator, openly assisting Joe Biden during the debate. There it is. There it is. Very important, right? Then you have CNN. Now, Anderson Cooper, stunned beyond belief at Carl Bernstein on CNN right now. Listen to what Carl Bernstein told Anderson Cooper about Joe Biden's presidency and about his reelection chances. Listen.
Journalist. So, Carl, according to people you've been talking to, what are you hearing?
Well, these are people, several of them, who are very close to President Biden, who love him, have supported him, have been among them are some people who have raised a lot of money for him. And they are adamant that what we saw the other night, the Joe Biden we saw, is not a one-off, that there have been 15, 20 occasions in the last year and a half when the president has appeared somewhat as he did in that horror show.
15 to 20 times in the past year where that has happened. 15 to 20 times in the past year. I love the fact that he called it a horror show. He said in that horror show, because that's what it was. No, as we've been saying before, this was not a one-off. Anderson Cooper is stunned.
That we witnessed. And what's so significant is the people that this is coming from, and also how many people around the president are aware of such incidents, including some reporters, incidentally, who have witnessed some of them. But here we see tonight, as these people say, President Biden at his absolute best, and yet these people who have supported him, loved him, campaigned for him, see him often, say that in the last 6 months particularly, there has been a marked incidence of cognitive decline and physical infirmity.
What I wonder about is the people who were, working with him at Camp David, allegedly in this intensive debate prep, if there were concerns there about this, and I don't know if you have got any word about that, but how anybody involved in that debate prep, I mean, didn't anybody see something was amiss?
The debate prep was supervised by Ron Klain, who has been with President Biden for many years. And people I've talked to have all been to Ron Klain in the last year to say, we have a problem. We have a problem such as we saw the other night.
So see, guys, the mask is off. And I guess you got to protect Bernstein here for revealing all this on CNN, that they told them that there was a problem. They were having issues with Joe Biden, and they pushed this anyway.
There have been numerous instances where the president has lost his train of thought, can't pick it up again. There was a fundraiser at which he started at the podium, and then he became very stiff, according to the people there, as if it were almost a kind of rigor mortis.
This was reported allegedly in June of 2020.
This was this was a year ago, almost exactly, at the old Four Seasons restaurant on Park Avenue.
He even gave you the address, the old Four Seasons at Park Avenue. Carl took notes and came prepared.
And he became very stiff, and a chair had to be brought for him to do the latter part of the event. I think that what these folks are saying and have been saying for a while is, yes, He's great when we see him, as we have tonight, but he also has these inexplicable moments that we're very concerned about. And you, Ron Klain, and the First Family, we need to talk about this. And
Let me pause for a second. Let me tell you something. The doctor knows. There's no way, whoever Joe Biden's doctor is, there's no way the doctor does not know about this. But sometimes doctors are asked to keep quiet, right? Like, don't get this out to the public. It's not like we haven't had a president before that was experiencing medical issues and it was kept quiet from the public. This has happened before. So the doctor knows what's going on with Joe Biden, but by keeping that secret, that means that everyone that works with Joe Biden, they have to figure out a way to fix this and to deal with this at the same time with not really telling the public what the hell has been going on. And then if it wasn't for that debate performance, I don't even think these people would be speaking out about this right now. If Joe Biden, let's pretend that debate didn't happen. If that debate did not happen, would you hear this rhetoric right now on all of the mainstream media? No, you would not. The only reason you're hearing it right now is because it happened on the debate stage. Even though we've seen it happen during other press conferences that Joe Biden has had, other interview appearances that he's had as well. Remember, he tried to sit down midair in a chair that was not there. So the thing about this, and if you've had a relative that has had dementia or some type of cognitive decline, then you would know that there can be good days and there can be bad days. There can be good times and there can be bad times of that same day. So some days may be okay. They may be all right. And then other days they may not be okay. And as time goes by, they continue to decline. I'll show you this in just a second about the time of day with Joe Biden, because it's apparent that earlier in the day, he tends to be a little bit better, but after a certain time, he's not as good. So he doesn't have as much energy and those symptoms are more apparent. But that's the thing about dementia. That's the thing about cognitive decline, is that there can be good times and bad times. And sometimes you may catch all the good times and sometimes you may catch all the bad times. And sometimes you may not be present for either.
been pushed back repeatedly whenever it's been brought up.
And did your sources tell you about topics he's particularly engaged in, or are there?
Not only, and it's not just these same people. There is no question. I have heard for 2 years how sharp Joe Biden is in his national security meetings. He has special briefing books on Ukraine, on the situation in Gaza that go down into very detailed military reports. He has an absolute command of the facts. He's sharp as can be. You see the evidence of his being the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, of his work as vice president on foreign relations. So we're clearly dealing with two sets of one person. And it really needs to be explored, according to the people I'm talking to, and I think an awful lot of major Democrats believe this, including some who have made statements to the contrary. But this is a problem that's not going to go away unless it's explicable. Does this mean doctors' reports? I mean, obviously, it'd be great if we could have real doctors' reports from both candidates. Well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
He said real doctor reports. So you see, he knows, he understands what's going on there. Anderson Cooper stunned. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is happening. And then we also have Jake Tapper. Now, Jake Tapper comes forward just to let people know that he is not taking the blame for this. That's what Jake Tapper does in this segment here. He's like, wait a minute. I am not taking the fall for this one, fam.
In an attempt to reassure voters about his fitness for office, Biden campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon holding a call with party leaders earlier today, telling them this too shall pass. There is a discernible pattern of Democratic officials seemingly trying to convince you, the public, to not believe what you saw and what you heard with your eyes and with your ears on Thursday night.
So think about what he just said. Let's bring that back. Listen to this again. This is funny. I'm sorry.
Leaders earlier today telling them this too shall pass. there is a pattern, discernible pattern of Democratic officials seemingly trying to convince you, the public, to not believe what you saw and what you heard with your eyes and with your ears on Thursday night.
Oh my God, that is really bad. That is really bad. So notice the difference between his commentary, Anderson Cooper's commentary, and Mika's commentary. Mika is like, I've known Joe Biden for years, so vote for him, damn it. He's been through a lot. Anderson Cooper's like, why didn't anybody say anything about this? What is happening? Oh no, too much information being released. No. Jake Tapper is like, look, people don't want you to believe what you saw and heard with your own eyes and your own ear.
What I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare, the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Democratic officials have tried to spin this in many ways. They said President Biden just had a cold. They said it was just one off night, akin to when President Obama in 2012 was rusty and seemed a little huffy. But behind the scenes, make no mistake, most Democratic officials witnessed the same shocking spectacle that you did. The difficulty that the presumptive Democratic nominee, the current president of the United States, had just articulating his basic thoughts during the 90 minutes of the debate.
Yeah, so Jake is there to let you know, I'm not Mika, I'm not Morning Joe. I know exactly what I saw and you know what you saw. So now we're starting to see a split in corporate media where some commentators and pundits are still trying to defend Joe Biden's performance and others are like, nah, the jig is up. Let's get somebody else in there. The jig is up. Let's get somebody's in there. And it appears this tends to happen after certain times. So we're going to bring this up here as well. This is coming from Biden's aides. Biden aides said his debate performance was poor because he struggles to function after 4 p.m. After 4 p.m. And I even think they're stretching this as well. Because like I said, we have seen conversations that Joe Biden has had, whether they have been press conferences that were before 4 p.m. and he was still struggling then as well. So essentially, they're trying to say that he is sundowning. However, as much as Mika wanted to praise his performance in Raleigh, North Carolina after the debate, here we are again, just recently, Joe Biden commenting about the Trump immunity ruling from SCOTUS, and he does it again. I mean, we're not even 2 weeks out. Here we go.
I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote.
End of quote. He is reading off the teleprompter. End of quote is a note that tells you that is the end of that quote. He's done this before. Now, someone who is with it, they're not going to read that. They know not to read end of quote. And as much as Mika wants to make you feel sympathetic towards Joe Biden and thinks that you need to support him because he's her friend and he went through a lot of bad things in his life, but I would argue a lot of people have gone through bad things in their life. The reality is the American people have spoken. If you look at the poll here from CNN after the debate, should Biden be running for president? 28% said he should. 72% said that Joe Biden should not run for president. 72%. It's not even a close call. It's not even like, that's embarrassing. So now the media, they're scrambling because they have been lying about Joe Biden for years. They were the ones that pushed people. We need to get Joe Biden needs to win in 2020. Dana Bash, I remember during the Democratic primary debates, she was upset when Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire and Nevada. She was like, Bernie Sanders has won Nevada. What does this mean for Joe Biden? They were all behind this. And now they look foolish because they refuse to admit what a lot of us saw even back then. So they wanted Joe Biden. They pushed Joe Biden. They got Joe Biden. And this is what you're stuck with. Because the reality is Kamala Harris doesn't have a great approval rating either. And she's next in line as the vice president. They're already talking about bringing in other people or possibly bringing in other people like Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer. They're not polling to beat Donald Trump either. This is a mess, but they set themselves up for this mess. Disaster. So the media is trying to find a way to cover their ass.